Welcome to Wise Guys.
Today's topic, the Panchen Lama.
So now we're talking about the Panchen Lama, who is similar but different from the Dalai Lama.
Yeah, they have a relationship that works with each other. The Dalai Lama, as we mentioned in a previous video, is the spiritual head and oftentimes seen as a political leader, the spiritual head of Buddhism, and oftentimes seen as a political leader of Tibet.
Right.
He's been living in exile in India for quite some time now due to, Chinese occupation and general hostility toward both him and Tibetans. That hostility goes back quite a long way and is actually impacting the Panchen Lama.
Right. I mean, it goes all the way back to the 1950 surprise invasion of Tibet by China. But even beyond that, beyond the whole Tibet and the issue of the actual area and who lives in it, there's also the issue of what was, originally a very strict atheistic China, basically occupying a more spiritual Tibet.
Absolutely. So before we get into that history and the way the Panchen Lama fits in, it's important to know that the Panchen Lama plays a very, very critical role in determining who the next Dalai Lama will be. Right now, the 14th Dalai Lama is 81 years old, so his time on Earth is coming to an end.
Right.
He, just 21 years ago, was a part of the process and ultimately chose the 11th Panchen Lama. And it was said that the 6-year-old boy who was chosen 21 years ago, often a time when most of us millennials were being born, or at least the end of the millennial generation was, that same Panchen Lama, the 11th one, was kidnapped 3 days later by the Chinese authorities and hasn't been seen in public since.
Right. The last public appearance was like 95, but
yeah,
they don't know what happened to this guy. They do not know what happened to the Panchen Lama.
This is the last picture anyone's seen of him, and he's a 6-year-old boy. So it's pretty clear that it's been a while, and in fact, no one has seen him, and there's now a new Panchen Lama, according to the Chinese Communist Party.
One that Beijing handpicked.
Absolutely, and this Panchen Lama, who was the replacement for the Dalai Lama's chosen Panchen Lama, let's refer to him as Panchen Lama 2. And Panchen Lama...
that's good, I like that.
Panchen Lama
PL2.
Yeah, PL2. PL2 has been a very adamant supporter of Chinese communist rule and the Communist Party. In fact, he goes to their top political advisory meetings every year, which is the Chinese Communist Political Party Conference, effectively. And this year, just about 2 or 3 weeks ago in early March, he actually gave a speech for the first time at one of these gatherings.
Right, and his main message, I mean, if you had to break it down, was a twofold message. Number one, religion is in China to support the Communist Party.
Absolutely.
And monks should be developed in China to support the Communist Party.
Now, this is actually really interesting because it says a few different things. First of all, it's, I guess, simple for a lot of us in the Western world, and actually a lot of us outside of China, to be able to recognize that, the Dalai Lama, who is chosen as the original Buddhist and Tibetan leader, clearly does not recognize this PL2, the fake Panchen Lama, as a legitimate part of Buddhism, and is concerned for his friend, the original Panchen Lama, who hasn't been seen in 21 years, may or may not be alive. We don't really know.
Right.
However, this is the first time that PL2 has spoken in public, and his message was really interesting because to me it suggests an expansion of Buddhism and like a link from that expansion to the Communist Party.
I would say state Buddhism.
Effectively, right?
Really?
Like a Communist Party monk system being developed. And that is intriguing and a little scary, I'd say.
I mean, you kind of saw parallels. So both on the Christian side in China and on the Muslim side, there are official churches where the sermons in those institutions have to be approved by the Communist Party. So maybe they're more open now to allowing some type of state-approved Buddhism.
I mean, I'm hesitant to say
having it represented at a higher level, but
maybe
I feel like that's just going to backfire.
No, well, I'm just hesitant to call it even Buddhism at that point, right?
Right.
Because
that's what Beijing would call it. But you're right.
If the Communist Party is developing monks and they want these monks to follow PL2 and denounce the 14th Dalai Lama, who's literally hiding out in India because otherwise he'll die if he's in China, or at least it won't be pretty. I would be far from willing to say that this is going to be a proper form of Buddhism that's created. I'm thinking a lot of the Uyghurs here.
100%.
The Uyghurs are in Western China, in Xinjiang province mainly.
They're Muslim Chinese.
Exactly. And I don't know, I'm thinking a lot about the last time the Chinese said, yeah, we'll accept a different religion that is in this area as long as they obey the Communist Party rule. And the second Xinjiang in general, but the Uyghurs had religious traditions or ideals that didn't fit the Communist Party's mold, we have seen a lot of negativity happen. I mean, just from not being or being forced to eat or not being allowed to fast during really critical Muslim holidays, for one, and things are bad enough in Tibet that they're lighting themselves on fire.
Self-immolation.
Yes, and that says a lot to me. I don't know. I'm really nervous about the idea of what this suggests, because before it was that the Chinese just didn't want the Dalai Lama speaking out against the Communist Party. Now it seems like they're trying to actually create a parallel, and that's pretty terrifying, because we've seen what the Chinese government's able to do in terms of instilling their own version of events into people's minds.
It's a type of nationalist project, which could work for them, which might not. But there's really too much bad blood. I mean, if we look at the Panchen Lama before Panchen Lama 2, before Panchen Lama 1, was the let's call him Panchen Lama 0, he was actually imprisoned by the Chinese authorities for speaking out and trying to document the terrible famines that were occurring in Tibet during the Cultural Revolution in the 1960s.
To clarify, Panchen Lama 0 is actually the former life of Panchen Lama 1 currently, according to Buddhist tradition. And he died in a Chinese prison.
In a jail.
When he was found and re-identified as a 6-year-old boy. He was kidnapped 3 days later and hasn't been seen for 21 years.
Right.
I think we're seeing a pattern of the Panchen Lama just not getting along with the Chinese government's point of view on things. And I think that it really suggests something, that this new Panchen Lama is tricking the world's most populous country into believing a different form of Buddhism.
Yeah, and I think there's a larger point to this whole thing. And I think it's something that often, just because our cultures are so far apart, we don't get a lot of in America, is that in China, things are so structured centrally and so state-driven that this is just another attempt by them to really control people that they have trouble with within their own borders.
Absolutely.
Which is almost like their number one threat, really, is people within their own borders.
In 2017, I'd say almost definitely, China is currently going through a major political change in that the Chinese Communist Party will be having their, I don't want to call them elections, but they're changing.
There's an electoral part to it.
Right.
It's a really Communist Party internal transitions.
Xi Jinping, the president of the People's Republic of China, has actively, made sure that there is no domestic upheaval right now, because he ultimately is trying to consolidate more control and have another term in the party that goes, I guess, as well as this one has. He's consolidated a lot of power in the last few years.
Any type of major internal disturbance during Xi Jinping's power transition could see him being kicked out.
Right, exactly.
We saw that with Tiananmen, the protests in the 80s.
Yeah, absolutely.
The leadership had to be kicked out because they just felt like, look, our number one threat is internal revolt. If you can't handle that, we got to get new leadership.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the main reasons that a lot of what happens this year in foreign policy, I think it's likely China plays a cooler hand. Yeah, it's subdued almost response to a lot of things, because it is just, in Xi's mind, it's just not worth the risk of having social unrest follow any sort of foreign policy aggression, because that would be really bad for his control. I also think, though, that this Buddhism and Panchen Lama PL2 story has deeper roots in the mindset that the Indian-Chinese, almost seemingly inevitable sort of conflict will bring about. I really think that, it's important to remember Buddhism was originated in India. It's a offshoot of Hinduism to a certain extent.
Traveled over the mountains to China.
Exactly. And while the Chinese form of Buddhism is definitely different than the Indian form of Buddhism, they share similar roots. And I think that it is the fact that the Dalai Lama is hiding out in India. The fact that
just that alone is just a huge amount of friction in that relationship.
Exactly, and India refuses to even set up a meeting, between the Chinese government and the Dalai Lama, let alone actually tell him not to make anti-Chinese speeches.
When they capture people and you take them away, you might not want to have a meeting with them.
When everyone's still confused about PL1's location, which is, we're laughing, but it's sad, right? Like, we just don't know where the 6-year-old boy went, and that was 21 years ago. And I think that this is it plays into people's minds. I think it feels almost as if this is just one more thing that is going to cause greater tension in the long term. But like we said, the Chinese right now are very focused on their domestic, and social
stability.
Peace and stability.
It's really stability.
Absolutely.
And that's probably where a lot of this PL2 stuff is coming from.
Definitely. This has been an update on the Dalai Lama and Panchen Lama's relationship in both China and India. As always, thanks for watching. This is The Wise Guys, and if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to email us or get in touch with us via Twitter.